They informed me I was not welcome at Christmas this year, explaining that they had held a vote and concluded my presence was too negative. Consequently, I retrieved every present I had mailed in advance, which included the $300 spa gift certificate my mother had intended to use that very day. My brother called me, shouting. I reminded my mother that the family had voted. Remember that. And then they claim I'm the one who spoils everything, that I'm too solemn, too forceful, too pessimistic, that I depress the atmosphere, that I insist on profound conversations when everyone else simply wants to be lighthearted. I have heard this refrain in every possible variation. Sometimes it's murmured under the assumption I am out of earshot. Other times it is delivered directly to me, disguised as a jest. My sister once informed me that I drain all the pleasure from a space. My mother asserts that I constantly force every situation to revolve around my emotions, as if that is a personal defect. My brother simply exhales and looks away whenever I speak for more than a few moments. They do not hear me. They have never inquired why I am this way. They have simply concluded that I am a weight to be carried. And over time, they have conditioned me to accept this as truth. I used to believe this was simply the nature of family. You tolerate it. You pardon. You continue. Even when they let you down. Even when they left my 5-year-old daughter by herself in the house for almost 2 days because it slipped their minds that we were relying on them for childcare. They were supposed to look after her while my husband, Drew, and I attended a work function. We returned on Sunday evening. The house was unlit. Ellie was watching television, eating crackers off a plate on the floor. She told me her grandmother had departed the previous morning to attend something enjoyable. My mother later commented that we should have provided more sustenance. Drew nearly lost his composure. I made excuses for them. That occurred last year. I believed that if I continued to be magnanimous, to take the high road, they would eventually recognize that I was not the issue. So this Christmas, I invested immense effort once again. I didn't want Ellie to sense that our family was fractured. I didn't want Drew to endure another holiday feigning deafness to the remarks about his income or the pointed comments about us not paying our equitable portion for family trips. I personally selected every present, mailing them all early because my mother claimed it would simplify things. The $300 spa certificate was for her, the very establishment she always mentions visiting but never does. I assumed it would be the one present about which she could voice no criticism. The following morning, December 23rd, I was in the middle of brushing my teeth when my phone vibrated. It was a group text. My mother, both my siblings, and me. There was no salutation, just this message. We spoke last night. We took a vote. We believe it's for the best if you don't join us for Christmas this year. There has been excessive turmoil. We simply desire a tranquil holiday. Then my sister appended, it's not an attack. We care about you, but you are intense. Perhaps next year. I gazed at the screen, toothpaste still foaming in my mouth. No one had even asked how I was managing. No one had even entertained the idea that perhaps they were the source of the constant friction. They had voted as if I were a piece of legislation. As if this were a democracy and I had been outvoted. I showed Drew the message. He didn't say, I warned you. He simply asked what I planned to do. I replied, I'm taking back what's mine. And I was completely serious. That night, I canceled the spa gift card. The digital code was deactivated instantly. I contacted the Etsy artisans. One had already dispatched the item, so I provided her with a different delivery address, my own. For everything else, I initiated every return possible, reported several orders as delivered to an incorrect location, and intercepted a couple of packages in transit. By the next morning, I had successfully recalled at least half of it. At 10:41 a.m., my mother called, saying she was already at the spa, and they were informing her the code was invalid. I did not apologize. I simply stated, the family voted. Remember? Then I ended the call. She phoned again. I let it go to voicemail. She sent a long text. I did not read it. For the first time, I felt no fear of disappointing them. They had made it clear I was not family, but a convenience they expected to receive for free. Childcare, gift-giving, smiling when they ridiculed my husband, laughing when they held me responsible for situations they had created. That is not love. I am uncertain what the future holds, but I know this. I am finished being their target. After the spa certificate situation, everything fell into a deep silence. No apology, no confrontation, just that unsettling quiet they adopt when they have decided they are the wounded parties. I thought my mother might at least call again, attempting to guilt me into remorse. But there was nothing, not even a hollow, "We still love you." Just silence. Then I saw my sister's Instagram story. A boomerang video of them all clinking wine glasses beside a long, elaborately decorated table. Candles, coordinated napkins. I counted the place settings. The table was set for 10, not 11. The caption is what truly struck me. Just the authentic crew this year. 2 heart emojis. No tag for me. Not even for Ellie. As if we had never existed. I stared at it for a long while. The tablecloth was one I had gifted my mother the previous year. The centerpiece was one I had crafted by hand 3 Christmases ago. She had even used my recipe for the garlic herb rolls. I recognized the slightly burnt edges she always produces. They desired my labor, not my presence. Drew entered the room, saw my expression, and didn't need to ask what was wrong. He already knew. He just sat down across from me and said, "So now, do you understand?" He wasn't triumphant. He was weary. He has been telling me this for years. And I always rationalized their behavior. It's just their nature. They don't intend it. They're under pressure. But none of that could explain how they left our daughter completely alone for an entire day and night last year while we were away. They had gone to a casino. Ellie had eaten cereal and crackers for her meals, and my mother had the audacity to criticize me for not leaving more suitable snacks. And I still forgave them. I told Drew it wasn't worth a conflict, that perhaps she had simply forgotten. Now, I cannot even speak those words without feeling revulsion. On Christmas morning, Ellie didn't question why we weren't visiting her grandmother's. She just asked if she could unwrap her gifts early. I watched her open the presents Drew and I had chosen for her, all without any turmoil, without anyone making thinly veiled jokes, without my mother labeling my selections as extravagant or desperate. It was serene, and in that moment, the realization struck me. We could have experienced this every year. We had just never permitted ourselves to do so. That evening, we took Ellie out for sushi. She wore her glittery boots, the ones my mother declared were a frivolous expense. At the restaurant, she danced in the booth and dipped her fries in soy sauce as if it were the most magnificent feast imaginable. She was genuinely joyful. As we ate, Drew said something that left me breathless. "You would never allow anyone to treat Ellie the way they treat you. So, why do you permit them to treat her mother that way?" That thought remained with me the entire night. 3 days later, my sister attempted to return the bracelet, the custom piece I had canceled. She filed a complaint with the seller, alleging it was defective and could not be worn. She even submitted a fuzzy photograph of an item that bore no resemblance to what I had purchased. The seller contacted me privately, perplexed, asking if she should issue the refund. I told her no. Then I added, "Block her. She is not a client. She is family." The seller replied, "Yikes." Understood. I began to recognize the pattern everywhere. All the subtle methods by which I had been conditioned to cater to them. I recalled the time I covered the cost of my brother's children's braces, and no one even thanked me. The year I organized my mother's surprise birthday party, paid the caterer myself, and was then blamed for not inviting a cousin she doesn't even like, but it was the principle. The time my father insinuated that Drew should contribute more financially to family functions, even though we were scarcely making ends meet. The most painful part is that I allowed it to happen. I let them diminish me so they could feel more significant. Then New Year's Eve arrived. I received a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was cloyingly sweet, as if she had been rehearsing. She said she and my father were discussing revisions to their will, that they wanted to ensure everything was equitable and no one was excluded. Then she added something that made me feel sick. "But we'd truly appreciate it if you could commit to ceasing the turmoil with the family. You know, for the sake of harmony." That was it. That was their leverage. The will. As if I should feel honored. As if I should be thankful they were considering including me in their estate. I did not return the call. I just sat there, reflecting on all the years I had convinced myself I was the issue, when in reality I was merely the most convenient scapegoat. New Year's Day commenced quietly, too quietly. No texts, no calls, not even the usual passive-aggressive "hope you had a great night" from my sister. I understood their strategy. They were giving me the silent treatment until I came crawling back, apologizing for my reaction, pleading for reconciliation. I did not yield. That was the established cycle. They would do something cruel, I would become upset, they would contort it into being my fault, and eventually I would capitulate because I couldn't bear the strain. I would arrive with cookies or a present or an insincere letter of apology, and they would accept me back as if I were a lost pet returning home. But this year, I awoke transformed. I was not seeking their validation. I was not practicing my justifications. I was not checking my phone every few minutes. I was calm, and it felt peculiar, as if my mind didn't know how to function without guilt directing it. Around noon, my brother finally broke the silence. He sent a lengthy message about how my conduct was injuring everyone. He said, "You should never have reclaimed the gifts because it made Mom weep, and now she was humiliated in front of her friends." He mentioned that the spa had called her to confirm the code was canceled, and she had to stand there pretending she was aware. He concluded with, "You genuinely need to contemplate how your actions impact other people." The irony of that statement was almost laughable. I disregarded the message. An hour later, my sister sent a voice memo. I didn't even listen to it. I saved it in case I ever wanted a recording of what manipulation sounds like, but I denied her the satisfaction of seeing it played. It wasn't until later that evening that my mother contacted me again. A brief text. "We need to talk. Families shouldn't treat each other this way." I stared at it and thought about all the instances over the years I had suppressed their actions. Like the time my father called Drew not a provider because he chose to attend Ellie's school event instead of helping my father move furniture. Or the New Year's Eve I drove 2 hours to collect my mother because she refused to take a rideshare, and she spent the entire journey berating me for making her late. Or the countless times they told me I wasn't sufficient, even when I was giving everything. They always said family remains united. But somehow, that principle only applied to me. I was the adhesive they tore apart, piece by piece, because they never concerned themselves with the cost. That night, Drew and I finally had a real, profound conversation about everything. I confessed my feelings of guilt, shame, and the foolish hope I clung to that they might one day treat me as they treat each other. And he told me something that resonated deeply. "You keep striving to be the daughter they desire, but they don't even know who you are. They only know what you can provide for them." I felt something change inside me. Something burdensome that had resided there for years. That's when I understood the reality. I wasn't losing a family. I was finally extracting myself from a cult I never realized I had joined. The next morning, something unforeseen occurred. My father called. He never calls. When I answered, he didn't even say hello. He stated he had heard about my actions with the gifts and wanted to discuss it maturely. Then he brought up the will again, not subtly. He said decisions were being finalized soon, and this type of behavior was not improving my position. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't attempt to justify myself. I simply said, "I'm not interested." He was silent, utterly silent. Then he asked what I meant. I didn't elaborate. I hung up. And the moment I did, I experienced something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Tangible, physical relief. They weren't losing a daughter. They were losing their most reliable asset. And I was finally starting to see myself through Drew and Ellie's eyes. Not as a complication, not as a burden, but as someone deserving of protection. After the call with my father, I anticipated the customary silence. That was always their method. Become quiet until I returned, subdued and contrite, usually bearing a peace offering as if nothing had transpired. But this occasion was different. Something had changed, not only in me, but in them. 3 days later, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. It said, "Hey, I believe this was meant for you." They had added the wrong person by mistake. Thought you should see this. Attached were screenshots. A group chat between my mother, my sister, and my brother's wife, but the number they had added wasn't mine. It was 1 digit off. Some stranger, likely attempting to mind their own business, had been inadvertently included in their secretive planning and decided to forward the conversation. I scrolled through the messages. "She's becoming unhinged. I think we should consult a legal professional, just in case. Didn't she once say something to Drew about contacting Child Protective Services after the babysitting incident? I wouldn't be surprised if she attempted to file charges. We just need to ensure our stories are consistent in case anything occurs." For a second, I couldn't breathe. I wasn't furious. I wasn't pained. I was shocked. They weren't merely ignoring me. They were preparing a defense, constructing a narrative, concealing what they knew, on some level, was legally reprehensible. That weekend they abandoned Ellie. They knew it was a grave matter, and they were terrified I would finally take action. I showed Drew. He just stared at the phone and said, "They're frightened now." As they should be. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not from anxiety, but because I was strategizing. Every piece was falling into place. All the years of being made to feel like the difficult one, the exaggerator, the problem. It was projection. Classic manipulation. And I had been enabling it for over a decade. The next morning, I composed a letter. It was not emotional, not furious, just factual, precise, and final. I detailed exactly what had occurred. The neglect concerning Ellie, the history of emotional manipulation, the ongoing financial pressure, and the public falsehoods. Most importantly, I wrote that from this moment forward, all communication with me, Drew, or Ellie must stop. Any effort to intrude on our lives, appear at our home, contact us, or involve Ellie in any way would be deemed harassment and recorded as such. I also stated that I possessed records of everything. Texts, calls, witnesses. It was not a threat, it was a safeguard. I sent it to all of them. My mother, my father, my sister, my brother. The subject line read, "Notice of legal boundaries." They were not expecting that. For 24 hours, there was no response. Then my mother sent a 2-line reply. "You are shattering this family. We always attempted to love you. But if you wish to make us your adversaries, we will respond in kind." That was the final message I received from her. But the next surprise came a week later. I received a call from my aunt, my mother's elder sister. We hadn't spoken in a long time, not since she ceased attending family gatherings due to exhaustion, as my mother had always explained. I assumed it was health-related. It was not. She told me she had heard what happened and had information she felt I deserved to know. Years ago, around the time Drew was unemployed and finances were strained, my mother borrowed $9,000 from her. She told my aunt it was for us. Said we were struggling and would not accept help directly. Said she required the funds to discreetly support us. But that money never reached us. Not a single cent. My aunt only discovered this recently when she mentioned the loan to my mother, who laughed and claimed she had forgotten what the money was even for. I sat holding the phone, feeling the room sway. My mother had been telling people we were dependent on her, that we were accepting her money without gratitude. She had circulated that story for years, that she had rescued us, that we were living off her generosity, that Drew was too arrogant to acknowledge it. And none of it was true. I thanked my aunt. Then I walked to the bedroom and told Drew everything. He sat quietly for a moment and said, "You understand this isn't about you, correct? This is their character. They would deceive anyone about anything if it preserved their appearance." And I believed him, because it was no longer about a single spa certificate, or one Christmas, or even one weekend they deserted my daughter. This was about something much more profound. Control, perception, and manipulation. They were never going to confess their actions. They would simply continue to bury them, blame me, and hope I remained silent. But I was finally finished with silence. After the call with my aunt, I assumed that would be the final revelation, that the worst was over. But it turns out that when you sever ties with toxic individuals who depend on you for their reputation, their comfort, and their distorted truth, they do not simply disappear. They resist. Viciously, desperately, and clumsily. I didn't immediately share the information about the money. I needed time to comprehend its implications. My mother had lied to her own sister, taken thousands of dollars, and blamed it on us merely to portray herself as the selfless family leader, the rescuer. I couldn't stop considering all the other tales she had likely told over the years. From whom else had she borrowed? What other falsehoods had she woven into family discussions that made us appear unreliable or unappreciative? This wasn't just manipulation. It was calculated, performed, and controlled. But now they were losing that control, and it showed. First came the subtle attempts to reconnect. My sister sent Drew a direct message on Instagram. Not a genuine apology, just a "Hey, maybe we could all converse when things settle down." For Ellie's sake. That's always how they try to lure you back. Through the child, through obligation. As if they hadn't explicitly excluded me from Christmas. As if I didn't possess screenshots of them conspiring behind my back. Then my brother began appearing at locations I frequent. I encountered him at the grocery store near my residence. Then again at a coffee shop I visit weekly. Both times, he acted startled to see me and attempted casual conversation. The second time, he inquired if I had settled down yet. I departed without a word, but it didn't end there. The school contacted me a few days later. Someone, an extended family member, had called the front office asking about Ellie's schedule, whether she was still enrolled, and who typically collected her. The caller was subtle, cautious, and polite, but overly specific. The school staff noticed immediately and notified me. I knew who it was. I instructed the office to list every relative on my side as prohibited from contact. I met with the principal the following day and secured everything. No pickups without identification, no exceptions. I added Drew's sister as an emergency contact and removed everyone else. That was the day I began to grasp how far they would go, not merely to avoid accountability, but to penalize me for asserting myself. 2 days later, my mother appeared in person. She went to Ellie's school in the middle of the day. She claimed she was there to pick her up for a dental appointment, told the front desk she was the grandmother, and suggested I had likely forgotten to notify them. She could not produce a release form. She couldn't even correctly spell our pediatric dentist's last name. When the staff challenged her, she caused a disturbance. It became loud enough that the vice principal intervened. They instructed her to leave. When she refused, they summoned security. The school called me immediately afterward. I was at home. I sat at the kitchen table listening, my hands trembling not with fear, but with rage. That's when I contacted my lawyer. No more warnings. No more hoping they would simply stop. We dispatched formal cease and desist letters to every one of them. Legally phrased, documented, and unambiguous. If they contacted me, Drew, or Ellie again by any method, phone, text, social media, or in person, it would be considered harassment. One more step, and we would pursue a restraining order. They had no more room to maneuver. I didn't desire retaliation. I desired separation, predictability, and peace. But here is what I didn't anticipate. That night, after everything, after the emails were sent, after the school had secured everything, after the final boundary was established, something shifted. I felt lighter. Not joyful, not yet, but liberated. And then something happened that reaffirmed why this entire struggle was necessary. Around 9 p.m., I was folding laundry in Ellie's room. She entered wearing her pajamas, holding one of those inexpensive pink diaries with a small lock. She handed it to me without speaking. I asked what it was. She said, "I wrote a story about our new Christmas, the real one, with just us." I opened to the first page. It was a drawing of the three of us sitting in the sushi restaurant on Christmas night. Her boots were drawn excessively large. Drew had an enormous head. I appeared to have no neck, but in the illustration, we were all smiling. Beneath it, she had written, "This year, Mommy wasn't sad." I sat on her bed and simply held her, because she was correct. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't performing. I wasn't making myself smaller to endure a family that never truly acknowledged me. And somehow, through all of that, I had raised a child who could perceive the difference. After I tucked Ellie in that night, I sat in the dark living room, simply observing the stillness. For the first time, peace didn't feel like something I was awaiting. It felt like it was already present. I wasn't weeping. I wasn't questioning myself. I wasn't hoping for a phone call or rehearsing what I would say if they finally apologized. I was simply finished. And that type of finality is everlasting. In the days that followed, something unusual happened. Nothing. No phone calls, no visits, no fabricated crises. The cease and desist letters must have had an impact. Or perhaps they finally recognized I was serious. Maybe they never believed I possessed the fortitude until I actually demonstrated it. Whatever the reason, they remained silent. Not out of respect, but out of self-protection. And that was perfectly acceptable to me. I didn't discuss it with anyone. I didn't post about it online. I didn't attempt to persuade anyone of my righteousness. I simply resumed living, genuinely living. One morning, I prepared pancakes for Ellie and Drew. And for the very first time, no one commented on the messy kitchen. No one criticized how I sliced the fruit. No one rolled their eyes when I scorched the first batch. We simply laughed, ate together, and remained in our pajamas until noon. Then, on a rainy Friday, 2 weeks after I had sent the letters, I received a call from a blocked number. I didn't answer, but they left a voicemail. It was my mother. Her voice was calm, as if rehearsed. She said she was appalled that I had involved a lawyer, that she and my father had decided to discontinue a relationship with us, and that they hoped I would find healing and cease viewing them as the enemy. Then she concluded with a statement that gave me pause. "We will not disturb you again, but don't assume this means we will remain silent indefinitely if you attempt to distort the narrative." I replayed that final sentence twice. She wasn't relinquishing control. She was threatening me. Subtly, but unmistakably. Her tone was not one of grief. It was a warning, a pledge to safeguard her reputation regardless of the damage inflicted upon mine. I did not respond, and I did not save the voicemail. I deleted it because I realized something. They never held any inherent power. I had granted it to them each time I forgave them. Each time I let an offense pass for the sake of peace. Each time I remained silent to prevent an explosion. But no longer. This time, I did not engage in a fight. I closed the gate. No shouting. No public dispute. No endeavor to repair something they had no interest in mending. Just quiet. Firm boundaries reinforced by law, and the serenity that comes from knowing you owe no one an explanation. A week later, I received positive news of my own. After months of applications and late-night studying, I received the call. I had been offered a remote position with a publishing firm. Good pay, flexible schedule, full benefits. I screamed when I received the offer. Ellie thought I had won the lottery. In a sense, I had. Drew embraced me so tightly I could scarcely breathe. He whispered, "I told you they were wrong about you." They were. And now they do not get to participate in this next chapter, the one where I flourish without their consent. Ellie created another drawing the following day. She attached it to the refrigerator. It was a picture of me on the telephone with a broad smile. She titled it "My Mommy's Job." Underneath, she wrote, "She works from home because she loves us. My family has labeled me with many things. Excessive, theatrical, pessimistic, but never safe. And I will choose that over being included at a table of deceivers any day."